Hello!
Hello, AOS fans!
It's the Agents of Sigmar.
And tonight we've got a special report about the new rules changes.
Yes, we found another 6 little rules which we skipped over when we were going through the rulebook before, probably because there were just so many of them, and GW really hid some of them into the detail of the text.
Yes, we literally recorded on the day we received the box, so we were like reading through the rulebook frantically looking for changes and missing half of them, it seems. I will say, I really think that at the front of these rulebooks there needs to be a what has changed since the last edition.
Yeah.
So that those of us who have played a lot can find the rules. I mean, I guess the community sort it all out for us, but as we are the community, that's a bit of a problem. But you know, I think it would just be really helpful, even a Warcom article or something in the rulebook, just to say this is what's changed, because there's some pretty fundamental changes here, and you know they need to be. Everybody needs to be aware of them.
Yeah, because anybody who's been playing for a season or more may not notice these when they're playing. They may just keep playing the old way until they get to a tournament or something, and someone goes, actually that's not how that works now, and then they're going to be flummoxed. Yeah. So we figured we'd go through them now. So here are 6 more changes that we've noticed in Harrowdeep.
Yeah, and to be fair, we say we noticed them. I mean, this is off the back of Aman Path to Glory article and Bartosz and his Keep Chopping article. So thanks guys for doing the work and finding the detail. I'm not a details person. That's the problem. The rulebook goes to the wrong one of us.
Yeah, unfortunately, but never mind. So we're going to go through them now quickly. We like we said, they point out already as well, but we just figured we'd quickly summarise them because we already had the other video, so we figured this would be a nice little addendum to it. So the first rule change that we kind of noticed, kind of didn't really highlight in our game, is and I don't think it even come up in our game, is that there are no surge cards scoreable in end phases now.
No, there's a very specific step which we did talk about in 2 places, at the end of the activation and at the end of the power step, where you can do reaction, inspire, surge. They're the only times you can score surge cards. I think Feet and I struggled to think of any surge cards you might have been able to score in the middle of the end phase, but I'm sure it was doable. But you now can't.
The second one in there, which we kind of didn't cover in our battle report again because of the way we recorded it, but if you do choose to mulligan your hand and then redraw your cards, before you shuffle them back in, you do have to show your opponent them. Technically, if you follow the wording of the rules, that is clear because it tells you what you have to do in that situation. Your discard pile is completely open for anybody to look at, but you do have to do that before you shuffle them back in, which I'm sure a lot of people might go, oh, that's rubbish, I'm going to deal those, and I'll shuffle those back in straight away.
It'll be easy to forget because you're probably both doing it at the same time, and
exactly.
But obviously it is very important information in the tournament setting.
And it does give you that double-edged sword for mulliganing your hand. Yes, you can shuffle it back in, which is great, but obviously your opponent's then going to see what you're playing with.
Find out you're trying to feed the beast grave. I think we can't anymore. But yeah. Number 3 is the trap rules have changed. I don't think this came up in our report at all. I think you did. You may have trapped me at one point, but we didn't notice it anyway. They haven't changed very much. The rules for when you are trapped are the same. If you do make a attack against a trapped opponent, now if you roll any successes, you get +1 success to that roll.
Yep.
So that's pretty big. It's not It's not as huge as if you just got +1 success, because that would have been really big. But if you get any successes at all, then you effectively counts as 2, 3 or whatever successes. So I think it makes trapped even more powerful.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a little bit more of an incentive to go after it, because obviously straight off the bat, if you get a success, you get that +1 success, your opponent's already on the back foot, they've got to get more than 1 success to stop that from trap from kicking in, so that's not a bad one. Another point which we completely missed, the 4th point here, which is to do with objectives. You can now have more than 12 objectives in your deck, and they really buried that one. It wasn't really very obvious, like Robin says, could do with something at the start to point this kind of stuff out. Now, they were running in relic tournaments, they were letting you use more than 12. None of the other tournaments could. Championship and Vanguard, you had to have 12 and that was it, but now you can have more than 12.
Yeah, I wonder whether this is kind of like a way of separating this rules document from those championships documents, so, or format documents, because they say you can have as many as you like, but then maybe there's going to be a new championship document which stipulates you can only have 12, but then the relic document stipulates you have 15, and they don't have this confusion. Not that there really was one, but you have perhaps less confusion as to which format you're playing. That might change the number of objective cards, but if you're just playing casually, you can have as many as you like. game-wise, I don't think it would make a huge difference. I can't see circumstances where I would want to have more than 12 objectives, because you could still only have 6 surge objectives.
Yeah.
So any extra non-surge objectives you take are going to water down the efficiency of your deck. So I'm not sure it's going to have a massive impact, but maybe I'm wrong.
You never know. And it is interesting that they do specify a minimum of 6 surge cards, but not a maximum number of cards overall. So if there is a format out there such as Rivals, where you can just use your warband deck, and as we know, Hrothgorn has more than 6 surge cards, he immediately breaks that rule. But I guess we'll see how that gets dealt with as we get to it.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, it is codified that Hrothgorn is illegal. It's kind of fair enough because he's overpowered. 5th point, Pete, is the Inspire step. Now, this is a bit of a controversial one, I think. There are now, as I alluded to it earlier, there are now specific sort of subsections of things to do at certain points in the game. So now, at the end of an activation or at the end of the power phase, there's this little reaction step, Inspire step, Surge step, which I think were to put into the game to sort of help you where you had a reaction and could score surge cards and might inspire. Then there was some, depending on what order you did things, different circumstances might happen. Like maybe you needed to score an objective in order to inspire. Well, you can't do that now because the surge card comes after the inspire step. That kind of thing. I think that's why they've codified it in this quite handy little diagram. But there are already 2 specific steps now for inspiring, which has left a few warbands a bit high and dry, I think.
Yeah, there are a few like the Soul Ray, the Vampires and stuff like that. Even the Fast Riders from Season 1 who are sitting there now going, oh, well, I can't actually inspire now until the next time round, especially with people like the Vampires. It puts them in that stupid position where they should inspire because they have no hunger counters, but then the beginning of the next round rolls around, then they get given a hunger counter. So it's like, well... Yeah,
it does say when you fulfill the condition, next time there's an Inspire step, you can inspire. So it kind of gets around that, but there's... Talking about the Fast Riders, they go to 2 shields, which is pretty major increase. And if they can't inspire to after the first activation, if the Fast Riders player doesn't get that first activation, their defense characteristic of the Fast Rider that they've stuck out in enemy territory, because that's their Inspire condition, is only having 1 less shield than they should do. I mean, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like the cards are going to override that, and it's going to be, no, you just inspire as soon as that happens in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it does say that card text overrides rulebook text, but the community or whatever seems to be clamouring to say it needs FAQ clarification. I feel like that for me that will be enough, because the card text overrides the rulebook text, and the card text says at the end, in an end phase in which whatever happens, so it happens in that end phase.
It gives you a specific point in which that kicks in, so it's not like it's unclear where that might be.
And it probably isn't at a time when multiple things are happening, which I think is why they've broken out the reaction inspire surge. There's lots of things that are at the end of an activation, and they can't all happen simultaneously, so they've broken it out. So I do feel like certainly the Fast Riders, they should totally inspire before the second round starts, or whatever. But that's pretty major, and I think it's one of these things where GW have tried to solve the problem of people continually asking them which step comes first, and then they've created themselves a new one. Which hopefully they're going to FAQ. I don't particularly feel like it needs an FAQ, but the community does. So hopefully they'll do that. But of course we're so long overdue an FAQ that I'm not that hopeful.
No, neither am I. And then we're on to the 6th and final point, which is another really small change, which could have major differences, is actually who starts the power step. Now, it used to be that whoever turn it was, whoever just activated, they get to play a card first. So quite often you might, charge a character up and do something, and then play a power card to then get another benefit after that. But now, it's not actually you who gets to go first. It's if in your activation, in your power step, your opponent gets to go first.
It's massive, that. I mean, the amount of times you've played where you charge into somebody, you knock them off the objective, and then you sidestep onto the objective. Now, they can distract themselves back onto the objective, and your attack is wasted. I haven't really quite got my head around the ramifications of that kind of change, because I think there are going to be times when we play and I go and do something and then realise that actually I can't
then play this card afterwards. I'm not going to do that now then.
Yeah, It's bound to happen. So I think that is probably one of the biggest changes that we managed to miss.
I think that's possibly one of the biggest changes that will have a big impact on the game. A lot of the others are fairly large changes in their own right, but I think they will have, to an extent, a limited impact, like the Mulligan of your cards or being able to take more than 12 objectives. This one, your opponent going first in the power step, that really does feel like a very big switch.
Yeah, very much so. So what do you think overall then, Pete? Not just these rule changes, but all the rule changes. What do you think of them? I have definite thoughts. You know what I'm like with my thoughts.
You've got your thoughts. Well, for me, I mean, I think it's going to change up the game quite a bit. It's going to trip a lot of old players up. And it's going to mean that a lot of people are going to have to go back to relearning some of the steps in the process. Like you say, a lot of people will set something up and do things, and then they get to the power step and they'll be like, I'm going to play, oh, I can't. Oh, you get to go first. Oh, God, all my plans. So, but at the same time, I think it's a lot of fresh changes, which is making me more interested in playing Harrowdeep again.
Yeah, I mean, I like the changes in and of themselves. I mean, I think the biggest change, I think, for me, is the change to objectives, and the fact that you've got gloom tokens now and you can't see the objectives, and the placement is different.
Unless you have the acrylic ones, of course.
Yeah, I have concerns about that, though. I didn't think about it until afterwards, but I thought, actually, this game is supposed to be... you've bought into previous seasons, and you perhaps haven't got the money right now to buy into Harrowdeep, and you then you haven't got the tools anymore to play the game. Which, I mean, obviously you have to an extent, but you can't play the. And I know, obviously, you should have to buy the current version to play the current version, but it's kind of always been the same, and now suddenly it's fundamentally changed, and I feel like that's a slight misstep. I think it would have been okay if it had been. You could have recreated it with the tokens. Like maybe they just, you could call them the lethal tokens gloom tokens, but you didn't place them face down. You still place them face up. Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like it's changed the game, but I feel like it's broken the link between the previous versions, which I don't think is a good thing.
I'm trying to work it out because I distinctly remember saying not more than a month ago, or at least I remember myself saying about a month ago, I think they need to do a hard reboot on it and a big reset on the game and make it different and make some sweeping changes. And I kind of feel like almost they haven't gone quite far enough, but they've made enough changes. That's it. I
feel like that's the sort of change we were talking about, maybe, but they're still sort of hanging on. I'm perhaps being slightly inconsistent, but they're kind of sort of hanging on to the old stuff, but not quite. They've kind of gradually making it almost impossible to play with them, which I feel like is a bit, I don't know, it's a bit disrespectful, I suppose. I think it's that, but maybe they would just be outcry. But I just feel that this core set is fundamentally different, but GW is sort of pretending it's the same game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I don't quite like that.
It's too similar to before.
And so there's going to be this disconnect. If you come in and you've been casually playing and you've been away for the game for a few months because, like, maybe you haven't been able to go out, and it's now you turn up, it's like, oh, well, we don't play like that anymore. And I think that is bad for the game. There's another thing which I think is absolutely insane, which I thought about last night lying in bed. Actually, no, it was in refer to a comment on YouTube. Yeah. Starset they brought out last year to introduce you to the game.
It's nothing.
It's now, I mean, it was a bit bust anyway because it didn't have magic and stuff, but it's now completely and utterly, it doesn't introduce you to the game at all.
No, it introduces you to a game, but with some similar mechanics, but that's it. It's a bit like giving someone a copy of like Fire Team and going, here you go, here's an introduction to Kill Team. It's not really.
No, not at all. Or Blood Bowl 1 and say, I know you can play Blood Bowl 3.
Or here's Blitz Bowl. Once you played that, that's an intro to Blood Bowl. They're just different things. They're not the same.
So the starter set is, to me now, is even more obsolete than it was. So I think that's bad. I think, they're advertising this starter set. You get the starter set. Oh, great! Now I'll play Harrowdeep. It's like, oh well, no, actually, you can't play Harrowdeep. You're going to have to relearn a whole lot of stuff. Have to buy the other box, and you have to learn the new rules. I think that's a bit crap, frankly.
It is it's typical GW though, just chopping and changing, moving the goalposts, and not really taking anybody into account.
And I find it a bit frustrating because I do think, I don't think GW deserve the hate that they get, but I do find myself sometimes thinking, well, that's just indefensible.
Yeah. I don't want to be angry with you, but you don't give me a choice here.
Right, well, there are 6 changes that we found. Whether there are any more deep-rooted ones, there's a couple of tweaks to the law that you don't quite understand, to do with whether the Cataphragm curse has been broken. But I'm not. To me, the law has never been important in this game.
No.
Much as I don't care why, as I always say, I don't really care why black and white are lined up on the checkerboard to play chess. I don't really much care what we're doing in the Underworlds area.
Also,
but
also, I did read something about the fact that the curse of the Cataphragm is no longer present. So when people die, they just die, and that's it. Which kind of makes the whole premise of Underworlds a little bit more nonsensical to me now.
Yeah, it's not quite like that. I read that because you said that to me, and I've read the law, and it's kind of like, because the shade glass is still knocking around, and the Cataphragm invented the shade glass to hold the life force of people, and it still can do that because it's kind of seeped into the Harrowdeep, because Harrowdeep's deep under the ground, and there's kind of like a weird dimensional portal-y type things underground that connect it to all the other realm
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Wave my arms in the air and use long words and it'll all make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think about GW's handling of this latest season and the way they've sort of changed it but not quite changed it, and can you spot any other rules that we haven't covered in this video or the other one, which will be linked. And
there will be no prizes if you do, but
none whatsoever. But we might make another video and steal them.
3 more things we missed.
So we'll see you soon in Harrowdeep.